Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This is the second part in a two-part series that I am releasing, and this has specifically to do with 10 financial tips that you can use to get yourself into financial shape. Now, the reason I'm doing this, for those of you who don't know, is I started seeing a lot of people within the fragrance community having financial troubles, and I was kind of shocked at it, and this is the video letting you guys know, what you can kind of do to get into financial shape. Now, I used to have money problems, I used to have finance problems, but using these tips that I'm going to go ahead and let you know, this is what worked for me. Hopefully you guys can use this info and be better prepared yourselves. Now, I am not endorsing anyone, any company or anything like that. This is all free. There are people who are better at this stuff than me. So if any of this interests you, just do some searches online. You'll find even more in-depth info on some of the stuff. And if you have any questions, obviously, feel free to let me know, leave a comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer them through that. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get started on the tips. Now, these tips are in no particular order. Let's start with number one. One additional tip before we actually get started, I'm not going to be talking about investing in this video. That's a separate topic, and while it's a whole thing to actually get into, but investing I'm actually going to leave out of this video completely. So if you want to ask me about that specifically, sure, but I'm going to keep that out of this video. All right. Tip number one, this is probably the biggest tip that I can give you guys: make a budget. With a budget, if you make a financial budget, you'll be able to know, clearly how much money you're taking in, how much money is going out, what you can do with that. And once you have a budget, you know exactly what you're spending money on, all that good stuff, and you can start to tailor what you do with said money. Now, making a budget is a hard thing. For the longest time, I did not want to make a budget because deep down, I was kind of afraid of what I would actually see, that, I wasn't making as much money as I thought I was spending too much, and it's a scary prospect. But once you kind of get over it and you do it, you kind of start to realize, how is it that I've gone this long without actually making a budget? And so, a budget to me is the very first step at understanding. Now, there are many sites and places that you can go ahead and utilize that teach you how to make a budget. They teach you, what's the max amount you should be spending on food or on housing, blah, blah, blah. You'll know your fixed costs, all that good stuff. Again, there are many other places that you can go, and I can give you some more in-depth info if you ask me, but that's pretty much the first very thing: make a budget. So tip number two, pay down your debt. Your debt is like a millstone hanging around your neck. The general rule is you want to pay down higher interest debt first before lower interest debt, because the higher interest that you have, the more money that you're paying people just to hold, just to have that money outstanding, basically. So you want to pay down your high debt first, going down to your lower debt. Your credit card debts are usually higher debts. A general rule for me, at least, is to never have credit card debt to begin with, or at least month-to-month credit card debt. But beyond that, you want to pay down your debt and pay it down aggressively, basically, because once that's down, you're not paying extra money just to have that debt outstanding. So two, pay down your debt. Tip number three, save for retirement and save now. It's never too late to start saving for retirement. In fact, quite the opposite. You want to start saving for retirement as early as possible. Now, there are many ways to actually save for retirement, but the general rule is you kind of want to save at least 10% of your income and put that away so you can have it for retirement. Now that retirement just never, ever, ever gets touched. But if you're at a company, a larger company like I am, you always want to utilize your matches, basically. Like most large companies have 401ks and they have 401k matches. And what 401k match basically means is they'll say something like, we match up to 5%. So if you set aside 5% of your salary, they will match that 5% and it will go into a 401k. You always want to at least match up to, or save the percentage up to that match, because anything that you don't, you're just leaving money on the table, really, because that 5%, they're just going to match it, and if you're not going up to that 5%, then you're, again, just leaving money on the table. So yes, the other tip is save for retirement. And the earlier you start doing it, the better off you're going to be when you start getting older. And you start to see that snowball effect with funds as you've been saving. Tip number 4, save for a rainy day. This is a little bit separate, only that I view saving for a rainy day as a target, really. The rule of thumb that most people use is you want to have enough money within your bank account so that if you lose your job, you can go for 3 or 6 months without ever having to, reach in for a loan, ask for a payment, use your credit cards, anything like that. You should have that much money saved aside so that you have a financial stable base and you don't go, put yourself into debt or anything like that. So that should be the target of your savings. My wife and I, we're a little bit more conservative than that. So we have probably actually, no, at this point, it's a little over a year's worth of just strictly savings that we put aside that, if we both lose our jobs, we can go a year without ever touching any credit cards, anything else basically except for that savings. So, have a target in mind, save towards it, but you definitely want to save for that emergency fund. Tip number 5, pay your bills on time. This one is pretty simple. Outside of general responsibility, you always want to pay your bills on time. And if you don't pay your bills, you could get strikes on your credit. You could, end up paying more fees for those bills. You definitely want to pay those bills on time. I personally like to automate a lot of my bills now. I just hook them up to my checking account and it's automatically, deducted from every time it comes up, it's automatically deducted. In other words, I'm not manually paying any bills, really. So, and you just have to monitor like once a month to see, what they took out and just kind of go about things that way. And that makes sure that you don't forget to pay any bills. So, 5, pay your bills on time. Tip number 6, use credit cards to your advantage. At this point, there are a lot of credit cards that have a lot of advantages that kind of go on to them, but the main advantage that a lot of them have is points. So for example, as you use your credit card and you're paying them off, you start accruing points and you can use those points to purchase flights, purchase things. Personally, I use the, I like to use the Chase cards because they've got the Chase travel cards and things like that. And so my points are worth double towards travel, things like that. And so, every year, my wife and I probably get 2 or 3 free flights and a couple of free rentals just based on the fact that we used the credit card and got the points basically for it. Now, again, just quick note, you always want to pay off your credit card. We don't, at this point, we don't even look at the interest rate on credit. I don't even know what my interest rate on credit cards are because I pay them every month. I make sure that I don't have any rolling over balance. And when you don't have any rolling over balance, you're not paying interest on any of the credit cards. So again, you try and use your credit cards wisely because you can. Some people have recommended an all cash diet, and personally I wouldn't go for it just because using credit cards, if you're using them responsibly and paying them off, you can actually get it's a boon for you. That's free money that you're leaving on the table as well too. So use credit cards to your advantage. Tip number 7, a little bit surprising, get on the same page as your spouse. One of the things that I love about my wife is that we're on the same page financially. We're both pretty frugal in terms of our spending. We're not big heavy spenders. We don't really spend a lot of money on clothes. We both enjoy, I guess you could say, our time with friends and things like that. So we both tend to skew, and maybe we'll go out to dinner with our friends. We both love to travel and things like that. But at the same time, we're both very conscious, and we never ever exceed our means. So we both have kind of like a small stipend every week that we can each spend on whatever the heck we want, and we don't have to really consult each other or anything like that. And that's the best way that we found it. But that's what we do. I would highly recommend getting on the same page with your spouse, because if you have this plan, it can be blown up if your husband or wife is doing something completely different and just putting a torpedo to your plan. So get on the same page as your wife. Sometimes it can be pretty difficult, but it's something that you really need to do if you're in a marriage or a relationship or anything like that. Now, tip number 8, work on your credit score. here in the United States, your credit score affects a lot of things. It affects your rate specifically that companies are going to give you when you do things like you purchase a house, you purchase a car, you go for a loan, you do whatever you do on that has major financial implications. They're probably going to ask you for your credit score. Some companies even ask you for your credit score so they can know how reliable you are with money, specifically if you're working in like finance or things like that. So having a good credit score is a good thing overall. Personally, my credit score is around 830 at this point. But that's only over years of actually working on it. My credit score used to be something like, I think it was like, what, 6 something or something, or I forgot what it was, but it wasn't really that good at all. So if you work on your credit score, you know, it's going to pay off dividends over time. And there are a lot of things that kind of go into that. And so I'm not going to dive into that because you can actually talk about that for, 30 minutes on end alone. But that's the tip I'm going to leave you, is work on your credit score. Tip number 9, do a yearly assessment. Every year, you kind of want to step back and reassess where you are financially, and then set goals specifically for what you want to do financially, and then, plan accordingly, put your budget accordingly here, do this, and, do other sorts of things. But it's really important that you kind of assess where you are financially at various periods so that, you don't ever really fall behind of your goals or, put yourself in dire financial straits. So, sitting back, taking stock at where you are financially is extremely important. And finally, my final tip, live below your means. Just because you make $500 doesn't mean you have to spend $500. I like to think of it in many cases, or for me at least, is, if I make money, then a lot of times I do things like automatic deduction, for example. Like I'll automatically deduct from my paycheck and it's automatically set up so I don't even see it, within my checking account. Goes off to my investing accounts, goes off to my savings accounts, things like that. There's money that just automatically funnels there. I don't even see it. And then I'm not necessarily tempted now of the money that I have left over, is spend it immediately. I'll just throw it into savings or invest it or do something along those lines. But either way, you want to make sure that you live below your means. Just because you can buy something doesn't mean that you have to buy it or you should buy it. Obviously it's your money, you do what you want, but the less you spend, the more, secure you'll actually be, should you choose to, save that wisely, if you will. All right. So those are my 10 general tips. I hope they've been helpful. Again, there are people who talk about this thing ad nauseum. There are many different kind of schools of thoughts, but I just want to kind of give you a basic, primer, if you will. I was never ever good at, financial things, and I had to work on it over time to the point where now I would consider myself pretty proficient in it. Now, again, many resources out there, go ahead and check them out. But if you have any questions for me, feel free to message me, leave me a note, or do anything, and I'll go ahead and answer them. One thing, by the time you guys see this video, I will actually be on vacation, so I will get to your comments as soon as I possibly can. I'm gonna try and monitor them, but we're actually gonna be in Panama, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be getting to a computer and being able to check the comments and fully go over them. So that's pretty much it, guys. All right. Let me know what your financial tips are. If you have any, leave them down below, and leave them for people to go ahead and do their thing. All right. Thank you guys. Take care of yourselves, and you guys have a great day.